Welcome back to another Toltecpickups video, and today on the bench just want to show this quirky IBANEZ lawsuit base, and obviously we can tell it is the lawsuit of the RICKENBACKER 4001 model. This is dated, the seller stated it was 76, but the buyer seems to think it's 78. We've got a 78 stamp on the back there, so 78 I guess, let's say, whichever it is, 70s. I've done some research on these, and it's the wonderful red burst. It is the through neck design rather than the bolt on. I think the lawsuits also did a bolt on version, but this is the through neck. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 piece. And it looks like there's a kind of join here as well, where there were a top and a bottom piece sandwiched together there. But 5 piece through, well, 1, 2, 3 piece through neck, let's say. 4 if we're counting the rosewood style board, which has the binding on. It has the nice pearly triangle inlays as RICKENBACKER would. It's a really good copy, to be fair, as in its structural integrity, and I think it plays a little better than an official Ricky. It just seems as good a quality, and it has the single rather than the dual truss rod in the RICKENBACKER 4001, and RICKENBACKER base has had 2 truss rods, 2 adjusting nuts inside here, which I've stated in a video about RICKENBACKER before was just a big long flat bar that was bent over paws on itself. This is like a biflex rod, which means you start to tighten or turn one way and it'll lock up and it'll give back bow. You loosen it to 0, then keep going the other way, and then it'll do up bow. So it'll, rather than just being a single action, it'll bend both ways, pause. It has the nice herringbone, as you'd call it, style binding, which is the white plastic that comes around the top edge, and the herringbone design, as they would say, would be, it would be multiple bits of coloured, like this is black binding. It's not, these are more like square dots. Herringbone is kind of like you get on a suit or whatever. The stitch, it's like a cross pattern, let's say. It's got the exact same trash bridge as the RICKENBACKER style, the original. This bridge plate is a smaller size, I think. Seems quite solid. It has the string dampener, which is basically these 2 thumb wheels here. You would twist and there's a bit of sponge inside, and it brings the sponge up and it'll touch the strings to cause a dampening effect, so the string doesn't ring out as much. A very jazzy, dubby kind of muted tone to the string ringing out. Tuners seem great. They're not stamped, but they seem really nice and solid. It has got this nice truss rod cover which on some of the IBANEZ lawsuits, it maybe just be stamped or maybe had a fake Rickenbacker writing on there, but this one is an engraved script IBANEZ logo on there, which that's quite a nice little touch. The pickups are again a similar design. Between the two, there doesn't seem to be much tonal difference to me. They seem very similar. I haven't run this through a giant bass rig to try and replicate that classic gritty Rickenbacker bridge sound, quite a growly, throaty sound, if they're words we can use. They're a rubberized magnet on the Rickenbackers, so it's looking like a little like, you know, your ceramic cheapo black magnet. This is just a thin one, of course, ceramic style, but really chunky, thick and malleable. Do I have a little piece here? I don't know. I don't have any. Like a rubberized magnet, that's what they'd have in. I don't know how that technology worked, I'm not 100% sure, but bass volume, bass tone, treble volume, treble tone, treble pickup, bass pickup, that's how they'd list it. And somebody has fitted this plate on the Rico sound, is what you would call that, the dual jack inputs, but this is only working on the standard jack, which is bridge or bass, both together, neck. The Rico sound selection were there to enable you to take two output jacks out to two separate amplifiers. Then you could get a stereo sound, and one pickup would be going to one amp, the other to the other, if memory serves. This is just wired for standard operation. I haven't measured the scale length actually. I think this seems to be slightly, no? Yeah, just a slightly shorter scale. Almost like 33 and a half. 16 3/4 at the 16th. Sorry, pause. 16 3/4 inch at the 12th fret. Double that gives you your scale length. So it's a interesting bit of gear that's come in. All it came in for, I gave the frets a bit of a spruce up. They're very, very much like Rickenbacker, very low, very flat frets. It's got the 105, no, it's the 50. In fact, let's measure the string gauge that the customer requested. 55, 75, 90, 115. Let's check that again. 90, 115. I think it's 115. They're the string gauges. Anyway, it came because the nut action height was very high in this cluster here around the first few frets. Well, the nut action height, which is, when we say nut action height, that means the distance, you know, the string is sat in the nut slot, and they did have larger strings put on, but they were sat quite well in the slots. It was the overall height of it. which means that the height of the strings from the fret in this first area here are really high. So when you are tuned up and intonated, let's say, and then you are fretting the note, there's a longer distance for the string to travel before it hits the fret to make the note. So therefore, if that action height at the nut is too high, your note is going to be noticeably sharper in this area when you're tuned up and intonated. If you've just gone and done that part without addressing this, your note's going to ring sharp because it's bending the string further to hit the fret to create the note when you are fretting. And also that means it can be quite uncomfortable to play as well. We had checked the truss rod prior to adjusting this to make sure that we got that nice and within tolerance of how we want it. That's the first port of call when you're making an adjustment for your setups, is your truss rod, because if the truss rod had too much relief in it, you could bring that action height down a little by tightening the rod. Therefore you're straightening the neck out more and it's bringing those strings closer. So always check the rod first before you start going to nut action height and bridge action height, because you could find that it could bring that down here. But the rod was nice and adjusted with very little relief, is how I like it as well. Very little relief, nice and straight as possible, the neck. And then we just adjusted the nut and we cut the string slots deeper, so we've got a nice distance here at the first fret, and then just reshape the top. It is a bone nut as well, it's not cheap plastic or anything. So nut slots cut deeper so the strings sit in, and then reshape the top of the nut so the strings aren't sat too far down into the slots, and we get rid of a bit of material here to open the, so they're not buried in there, let's say, muting too much. Anyway, this is it. It is a lovely bit of gear for a quote-unquote copy of an original Rickenbacker. It has the cream binding on, and it's not routed and rebated to the full depth of the rosewood, so you get cream and still a little bit of the rosewood board showing. And there's even, it looks like another laminate piece on there, black. So there's quite a few pieces of wood to this base to make up the whole instrument. And I'm just checking if it's got like what you call wings, side wings glued on. Yes, it has, to the side of the headstock to bring, you know, more, you know, you're not going to shape that all out of one big giant piece of wood. The board at manufacturing is not going to be as wide as that, which is why they glue the sides on as well. And there it is. I'm not going to plug it in and play it through the trusty Philips and 10-inch speaker which I use for testing. You don't need to hear that, it's fine. It sounds like a bass. It's not quite got the growl that I would expect, but there it is. The Ibanez Lawsuit 78 Rickenbacker copy 4001, and that's easy, innit?